When my daughter told me that I should think about downsizing, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the suggestion came with a tone too polished, too carefully rehearsed. By the end of that week, I realized downsizing wasn't just advice. It was the beginning of their plan to take everything I had left. My home, my independence, even my dignity. And just like that, my daughter became a stranger. But before I tell you how far she and her husband went, and what I did in return, let me take you back to the moment I first understood that family doesn't always mean what you think it does. The November sun was thin that afternoon, pale light spilling across the living room I'd built with my late husband, Richard. The walls still held the photographs of 38 Christmases, Thanksgivings, birthdays, graduations. My grandson's first steps, my daughter's wedding, the vacations we scrimped for. That house wasn't just wood and drywall. It was us. I was stirring a pot of soup when Claire arrived, her husband Ethan trailing behind with his permanent scowl. She didn't bother knocking anymore. She'd gotten too comfortable walking in like she owned the place. Maybe, in her mind, she already did. "Mom," she said with the kind of brightness that always felt forced. "We need to talk." Her tone stopped me mid-stir. Those 4 words, "we need to talk," are never followed by anything good. Ethan planted himself on my couch, fiddling with his phone, while Claire perched on the armrest like a lawyer about to deliver bad news. "It's about the holidays," she began, smoothing her designer sweater. "We're hosting this year at our place. The kids are excited. But with everyone coming in from out of town." She hesitated, eyes darting toward Ethan. "We don't really have room for you to stay." I blinked. "Stay? Claire, I live here." "No, I mean," she rushed on, "the family dinner. The big one. We thought it might be better if you sat this year out. Just relax. Take it easy." The soup spoon slipped from my fingers, clattering against the pot. "Sit it out? Christmas." Ethan finally looked up from his phone, smirking. "It's nothing personal. The kids are older now. They want a more modern holiday. Less of the old traditions, you know? Old traditions. My traditions. The ones Richard and I had built when money was tight but love was abundant. The ones that had made Claire's childhood magical." "What are you saying?" My voice cracked despite my best efforts to keep it steady. Claire sighed, as though explaining something simple to a child. "Mom, you've got this big old house all by yourself. It's a lot of work for you. Too much, honestly. We just think it's time you consider moving somewhere smaller, cozier, somewhere near us. You don't need all this space." I looked around at the dining table Richard had refinished with his bare hands, the mantel he carved, the curtains I sewed when Claire was a toddler. Every corner held memory. Every creak in the floor carried his laughter. "This isn't just space," I whispered. "This is my life." Ethan stood up, adjusting his tie as though the conversation was already settled. "Look, we can help. There's a real estate agent in our neighborhood who specializes in properties like this. Prime location. You could get a good price and then..." "And then what?" I demanded. "Hand you the check?" Claire flinched, color rising in her cheeks. "Mom, please, don't be dramatic. We just want what's best for you. What's best for me." Funny how those words never actually mean for me. They mean for them. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, the weight of their words pressing against my chest. For years, I'd been the glue that held our family together, the safe harbor, the holiday host, the one who always made sure no one felt alone. And now the invitation had been revoked. Claire reached across the table, her manicured nails grazing my hand. "Think about it. Okay? Downsizing. We can talk after the holidays." Her touch felt like ice. I pulled my hand away. "I'll think about it," I said flatly, though what I was really thinking was how quickly a daughter could turn into a stranger. As they left, their voices trailed down the walkway, Ethan's low murmur blending with Claire's brittle laugh. I stood at the window, watching them drive off in their SUV, until the tail lights vanished into the November dusk. The house was quiet again, except for the soft bubbling of soup on the stove. My house, my memories, my only true inheritance. That was the night I realized Christmas wouldn't be about family this year. It would be about survival. And if they thought I was going to hand over the keys to everything Richard and I built, they had no idea who they were dealing with. Before we go on, if you've ever been told something was for your own good, while someone measured your living room, you already know where this is going. Subscribe, leave a comment, tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am. The morning after Claire's downsizing speech, the house felt louder in its quiet. The stairs creaked like they were clearing their throat to say, "Are you going to let them do this?" I brewed coffee in Richard's chipped mug, the one with the faded trout, and set out the tin of sugar cookies I make every December. I ate one without tasting it. At 9:12 a.m., my phone chimed. "Claire, morning, Mom. Quick thing, our friend Savannah is in your area today. She does senior safety consults. She can drop by, check the railings, maybe measure for grab bars." All part of aging in place. Aging in place. I stared at the words until they doubled. I typed back, "I didn't ask for a consult." 3 dots. Disappeared. 3 dots again. "Claire. No cost. She'll pop in. So easy." My thumb hovered over no, but years of smoothing waters and swallowing pride won the arm wrestle. I set the phone down and opened the pantry instead. That's when I saw it. A fresh stack of flattened, moving boxes leaning behind the vacuum like they'd grown there overnight. I hadn't bought boxes. I called Claire. She didn't pick up. I called again. Voicemail. On the 3rd try, Ethan answered with the voice he reserves for waiters and women he thinks can be bullied. "Hey, Mom. Big morning here. What's up? Why are there moving boxes in my pantry?" Pause, then that grin you can hear. "Oh, those. We had an extra pack in the car yesterday and Claire didn't want to haul them back upstairs. You know, thinking ahead. Thinking ahead." My jaw tightened. "Come get them. We will. After the holidays. No rush." Click. At 10:03, the doorbell rang. Hard. I didn't make it to the foyer before they knocked again. Quick, efficient little raps that sounded like they came with a clipboard. 2 women stood on the porch. One wore a blazer the color of wet cement and the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The other had a tape measure and a tablet. Behind them, the December sky was a brittle blue. "Good morning," Blazer chirped. "Savannah Pierce." We texted with Claire. "And this is Marnie. We're your safety team." "I didn't schedule this," I said, blocking the doorway with my body the way a mother goose blocks a fox. "Totally understand," Savannah said, breezing past "understand" like a yield sign. "We're just here to support your goals. Aging in place can be wonderful or it can be risky. Our data shows most falls start with thresholds like..." She pointed at my welcome mat. "We're not doing this," I said. "Not today." Tape measure peered around me. "Is that the original crown molding? Wow. If you ever decide to reconfigure, staging with light textiles will open the space. MLS buyers love a clean sightline." Both of them said the wrong quiet part out loud. "Who sent you?" I asked. "Claire," Savannah said. Too fast, then corrected. "Your family. We love family involvement." Family involvement. Boxes in the pantry. A safety consult with an MLS vocabulary. It was a house call, all right, but not for my blood pressure. "I'm not letting you in," I said. Savannah's smile held. "Of course. Consent is key. We can do a quick exterior assessment and email a plan. Purely informational. Also," she lifted a branded tote. "A gift. Lavender bath salts. Who doesn't like a good soak?" I took the tote because manners live in bone, even when indignation burns like a fever. They left in a flurry of business cards and a promise to follow up with actionable next steps. When the door shut, the house exhaled. I carried the tote to the trash and set it on the lid. Not in. I wasn't ready to make anything that final. Not yet. By noon I was at the dining table with a legal pad, a calculator, and the file box that holds 50 years of our life. Deed, insurance, the letter Richard wrote when he knew the chemo wasn't working and wanted to say everything while he still had ink in him. I traced my name on the deed with one finger. Sole owner. No co-signers. No transfer on death. Relief washed over me, warm and fleeting. Then I found the other document, the one that tied my stomach in a sailor's knot. Durable power of attorney medical. I remembered the day I'd signed it. Last winter's hip surgery. Percocet fog. Claire's soft voice. This is just in case, Mom. We'll take care of you. The POA was limited to health decisions. Not finance. Not property. I read the language 3 times out loud. Health. My breath steadied. Good. But a question crawled under the doorframe of my mind and sat there. What else did I sign that day? At 1:26, my neighbor Joan texted. Saw a pretty young thing with a camera take photos of your porch while you were out front. Everything okay? Camera? I stepped onto the porch. The wreath Richard made, juniper and ribbon, hung where it always does, slightly crooked, stubbornly ours. The welcome mat was askew. On the railing, a smear where someone's hand had dampened the dry dust. I looked up and felt it in my bones before I saw it. A tiny metal hook at the doorframe side, freshly drilled. For a lockbox, there was no lockbox. Not yet, but the hook waited like a throat clears before bad news. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message in a group thread I hadn't known existed. Family, Holiday Hub. The members included Claire, Ethan, my grandkids, and a long list of names I didn't recognize. I scrolled up. Weeks of planning. Menus. Seating charts. A photo of my antique dining set with the caption, picking up Nana's table January 3rd. Can someone bring a truck? I typed, Nana is still eating at her table. She is not a furniture store. I watched the dots bubble, then stop. No reply. I made tea and couldn't drink it. I stood in the hallway where the light falls just so in winter and saw Richard in it. Sleeves rolled, grin crooked, eyes saying we hold the line here. I walked to the hall closet and took down the small metal box only 2 people knew about. One of them was gone. The other was me. Inside, our passports, our marriage certificate, a copy of the will. I slipped the will into my cardigan pocket and felt steadier with its weight. 3:02 p.m. The doorbell rang again. Not hard this time. A polite ping as if bad manners might void the contract. A courier stood with a clipboard and a tube. Certified documents for Ms. Harmon, he said, pronouncing my married name like a verdict. Signature, please. I signed. He left without ceremony. I unscrewed the tube and slid out a rolled glossy sheet. A comparative market analysis. My house in full color. Angles only a person standing in my hallway could have captured. In the footer, a logo I'd never seen. Proposed list price. Handwritten, circled, smug. Authorized contact, Claire Harmon. At the bottom, a blank line labeled seller's signature. Someone had helpfully placed a sticky flag on it. Sign here. My tea went cold. My hands did not shake. I set the CMA on the table, smoothed the curl from its edge, and picked up the phone. Not Claire. Not Ethan. Not Savannah with her lavender salts and exit strategies. I called the county recorder's office. Deeds and transfers, the clerk said, voice flat with the weight of other people's emergencies. How can I help you? I need to know, I said, pressing the will against my palm like a pulsing bird. If anyone has filed anything against my property in the last 60 days. There was a pause. Paper rustled. Keys clicked. The clerk hummed. Then she stopped humming. Ma'am, she said, voice different now. Are you aware of a notice of intent to convey filed last week? It lists an authorized family representative. I closed my eyes. What name is on it? She told me. The house was very, very quiet. Outside, the wind lifted and the wreath stirred like it was listening. I said thank you, hung up, and walked to the front door. I slid the deadbolt, then the chain. Then I did something I should have done the day Richard died and left me to be both softness and spine. I took his old toolbox from the hall closet, found the Phillips head, and removed the new little hook from the doorframe. The wood splintered slightly as it came free. They wanted my house. They'd already started moving in. And now, finally, I was wide awake. If you're still with me, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments if you've ever had helpful relatives try to help themselves to your life. I read every story. I wish I didn't recognize so many. After I removed the little metal hook from the doorframe, the house felt like it inhaled. Not a big breath, just enough to remember it had lungs. I set the hook on Richard's workbench like evidence and made a list in his blocky, slow letters. He used to say, Feelings are clouds. Paper is weather. So I made it weather. 1. Recorder. 2. Realtor. 3. Locks. For money. 5. Witnesses. I put on my good coat, the one with the hidden inside pocket, and slid the deed and will against my heart. The county building still smelled like floor wax and tired coffee. At the window marked deeds and transfers, the clerk from yesterday, Tanya, a nameplate told me, looked up with eyes that had seen too many emergencies to flinch at mine. You called, she said. Ms. Harmon. I nodded. You said there was a filing. She tapped, printed, and turned the page around. Notice of intent to convey, informal. The word informal was doing a lot of work, like a pickpocket saying just borrowing. Under authorized family representative, a name, Ethan Lang. I let myself feel it for one breath. Not the anger, not yet. The other thing, the old, small ache of being seen like a problem to solve. Then I put my finger on the line that mattered. Owner of record, Margaret Annan Harmon, and asked, what can I record to make it clear no one speaks for me? Tanya's eyes softened a fraction. An owner's affidavit. Sworn statement that you've given no one authority to convey. And a revocation notice if any non-financial POA is being misused. I only signed medical, I said. Last winter. Hip. Then say so, she replied, already pulling a form. It doesn't stop bad actors, but it paints the glass. People see it. I swore and signed in blue ink so no one could photocopy my certainty. The notary stamp landed with a thud like a gavel. Tanya slid the receipt to me. Now there's paper, she said. Next. Realtor. Back in the car, I called the number on the glossy comparative market analysis. Pierce and Hale Property Group answered on the second ring. A receptionist put me through to a voice trained to sound like Saturday champagne. Savannah Pierce. I'm Margaret Harmon, I said, the owner of the home in your CMA. You will remove my property from your materials. You will not take photos, show, stage, place signage, or affix a lockbox. Any further contact must be in writing. Certified. There was a beat. Then the voice that smiles without teeth. Oh, Margaret, we're just advising your family. Claire mentioned concerns about your safety. Our goal is to... Your goal, I said evenly, is to sell houses. Mine is to live in mine. There is no listing agreement. There will not be one. You are hereby on notice. No authority has been granted. Check your email in 5 minutes for a copy of the recorded affidavit and a cease and desist. If you or your agents step onto my property without an appointment made by me, you will meet the trespass statute and my doorbell camera. Silence pulled itself tight. Then, we certainly don't want to upset you. You already did, I said and ended the call. I wrote the email, attached the stamped affidavit, and, because Richard taught me to leave footprints, sent copies to their brokerage's compliance department, the state licensing board, and myself. I BCC'd my neighbor Joan, who keeps everything and forgets nothing. Locks. At the hardware store, the clerk looked at the bag of deadbolts and strike plates in my basket. Somebody keeping you busy? Keeping me safe, I said. Back home, I spread Richard's tools on the hall runner. Joan held the flashlight like we were performing surgery. The click of the new deadbolt sliding home was a hymn. We stood in the foyer with our palms on the door like women swearing an oath. Tea? I asked. After we put up a sign, Joan said, practical as winter. We printed one on my oldest printer with the freshest ink I had. No trespassing. No solicitation. No showings. Owner occupied. Appointments by owner, only me. Smile for camera. We taped it at eye level. Money. I called the bank and put verbal passwords on every account. I set alerts. Any withdrawal, any transfer, my phone would sing. Then I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus and requested a fraud alert. The young man on the phone sounded like my grandson. Anything else I can do, Ms. Harmon? Yes, I said. Say my name again. He paused. Ms. Harmon. Thank you, I said, and meant it. Witnesses. I made a binder. Tabs. Deed. Will. Affidavit. Photos. Correspondence. On the first page, I taped a photo of the house the day we bought it, paint fresh and future thick in the air. Underneath, I wrote in pen, "This is not real estate. This is home." By late afternoon, a polite email bloomed from Savannah Pierce. "We take your concerns seriously and will pause all activity pending clarification with your family." She CC'd Ethan and Claire, as if to tug my sleeve. "See? We're all in this together." 2 minutes later, Claire texted, "Mom, why are you being hostile? Savannah is trying to help. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I typed and erased 3 different versions of the truth before sending the only one that would hold. "Any discussion about my house happens with me. At my table. No more third parties. No more surprises. Remove your boxes by Friday. Read. Delivered." No reply. At 5:40 p.m., the doorbell chimed its pretty sound. Not a knock. A musical, persuasive tinkle that tried to pretend we were all friends. I checked the camera. Ethan stood on the porch with a bouquet so white it looked like a surrender flag. Behind him, a woman in a black blazer held a briefcase and a notary seal. Between them, an older man with a realtor's smile balanced something under his arm. A lockbox. I opened the door on the chain and left it there, a literal boundary. "Evening," Ethan said, as if we were neighbors discussing weather. He lifted the flowers. "Peace offering. We brought Allison. She's a notary, just to tidy up some paperwork so the holidays are easy. And this is Trent from Pierce & Hale, just to answer any questions." Trent's smile dimmed when he saw the sign on the door and the new strike plate gleaming like armor. The notary raised her hand in a small wave, eyes flicking to the chain. "Paperwork," I repeated, tasting the word. "For my convenience." "Exactly," Ethan said. "Claire's with the kids. She sends love." I kept my palm on the door. "Before you say another word, know this. I've recorded an affidavit. I've notified your brokerage. And I've put the county on notice that no one is authorized to convey or represent me. If you've brought a listing agreement, you can walk it back to your car. If you push 1 inch past this threshold, I will call the police and I will press charges." He blinked, bouquet lowering. "Mom, don't be dramatic." I watched the notary's eyes. Professionals always tell the truth by accident. She studied the chain, then the new screws in the strike plate, longer than standard, like Richard taught me. She took half a step back. "Let me see the papers," I said. Ethan glanced at Trent. Trent cleared his throat and pulled a stack from a folder, flipping past tabs like a magician doing a sloppy trick. "Exclusive right to sell. Seller's disclosure. Blank. Waiting for my handwriting. A transfer on death deed form. Of all reckless things. With sticky flags yelling sign here in cheerful yellow." "Absolutely not," I said, the words low and steadier than I felt. "No one slides me into the ground while I'm still standing." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're making this harder." "No," I said, and slipped a business card through the gap in the door. "I'm making it legal. That's my attorney's number. Any further discussion goes through her." His face changed at the word attorney, the way bullies change when they see a teacher in the hall. For a second, I almost felt sorry for the boy I raised inside the man he became. Almost. Behind Ethan, down at the curb, a car idled. The rear window lowered 2 inches. Claire's eyes caught mine in the reflection of the porch glass. Hard, wet, startled. She hadn't expected the chain. She hadn't expected me to be tall inside my own doorway. The notary closed her book. "We can come back when you're ready," she said softly. She looked more human than anyone else on my porch. "Don't," I said. "Not without an invitation." They hesitated, a small knot of plans unraveling in real time. Then Ethan thrust the white bouquet at the space between us. Petals brushed the chain. "Keep the flowers," he said. "I will," I replied, taking them. "I paid for most of your life. I might as well get something back." I closed the door. The chain slid free. The deadbolt kissed home with that new, perfect sound. I carried the bouquet to the kitchen, opened the cabinet under the sink and tossed it, gently because even pity deserves manners, into the trash on top of the lavender bath salts. 2 peace offerings, neither peaceful. The house hummed around me, an old friend practicing a song. I set the kettle on and took my binder to the table. The porch light clicked on at dusk, just like always. Through the window I could see the three figures conferring in the cold, gestures sharper now. The lockbox man pointed at my doorframe and shook his head. The car at the curb idled, then went dark. My phone buzzed. A new text. Not from Claire. Pierce and Hale. Per your request, tomorrow's pre-listing photography has been cancelled. However, Claire has authorized a wellness check due to concerns about your judgment and safety. Please expect a visit. I stared at the words until the kettle sang. Then I turned off the flame and walked to the front hall where the sign hung straight and the screws held fast. A wellness check. So that was the next move. I flipped the porch light to bright, straightened my shoulders, and laid Richard's old Phillips on the entry table like a relic. Come ahead, I told the quiet house. We're ready. The message about a wellness check wasn't just a warning, it was a strategy. I'd heard of families doing this. Declare an elder confused. Bring in officials. Create a paper trail of supposed incapacity. Once that seed is planted, everything else, guardianships, forced sales, comes easier. They wanted me labeled, not listened to. I made my tea and sat in the living room, binder on my lap, Richard's photo on the mantel. The old house seemed to settle around me like armor. If they were sending someone to judge my wellness, I'd make sure the story told itself before they could twist it. The first call came from a blocked number around 9 the next morning. A brisk female voice announced herself as Officer Daniels with Spokane PD. We've had a request for a welfare check at this address. Are you safe, ma'am? Safe as houses, I said evenly. But you're welcome to step inside if you show identification at the door camera. I'll keep a record of your visit. There was a pause. Most people don't answer that way. That's fine, she said. 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. Officer Daniels was younger than my grandson, steady-eyed, polite. She looked around, noted the tea still warm, the crossword half-filled, the locks shiny and new. She asked if I was on medication, if I'd eaten. I answered everything calmly, binder open, showing her the affidavit, the emails, the photographs of the lockbox hook. Do I look like someone who's confused about where she lives? I asked gently. Her mouth tugged at the corner. Not to me, ma'am. I'll note the report as no concerns. Whoever called this in might have meant well, but... She closed her notebook. You don't need a wellness check. You need your family to back off. After she left, I sat at the window and watched her drive away, hoping Claire had the courage to see the uniform leave without incident. If she wanted me in handcuffs or whisked away to a facility, she'd have to try harder. That afternoon, the phone started again. Claire this time, her voice brittle, stretched thin like sugar pulled too long. Mom, I heard the police came by. We were worried. Why are you making this adversarial? I let the silence sit until it grew teeth. You filed papers. You measured my hallways. You brought strangers to my door with contracts I didn't request. That's adversarial. All I've done is keep my house. You don't understand, she snapped, and then caught herself. Her voice softened. It's about keeping you safe, Mom. This place is too big. Too many stairs. You could fall, and then what? We'd be left to pick up the pieces. Better my broken hip than my broken name, I said. I'd rather fall down my own stairs than be pushed out of my own front door. Why are you talking like this? She whispered. It sounds paranoid. Ethan thinks, I cut in, about mortgages and resale value. I think about memory, about Richard, about Christmases you've erased. Whose thoughts matter here? Her breathing was ragged on the line. You're going to regret pushing us away. Maybe, I said, but at least they'll be my regrets. She hung up. By evening, Joan was on my porch with a casserole. She didn't ask permission, just set it on my table and poured me a glass of wine. They're circling, she said. I saw Ethan's car parked across the street an hour ago. Lights off. Like he thinks no one notices a man who doesn't belong. We ate in companionable silence, the kind that feels like safety. Joan has no children. She knows about family that comes in other shapes. She promised to be my witness if anyone tried to claim I was unwell. They'll have to walk through me first, she said, steel in her voice. The next day, a letter arrived. Heavy envelope, embossed logo of Pierce and Hale. Inside, a notice of concern from their compliance department. It acknowledged my affidavit but also stated they had received repeated representations from family members asserting your inability to manage property affairs independently. The words swam with implication. Incapacity, inability, family concern. At the bottom, one line in Ethan's scrawl. We're only doing this because we love you. Love doesn't file conveyances in secret. Love doesn't set traps with notaries on doorsteps. Love doesn't call the police to build a file. I placed the letter in my binder under a tab marked evidence of harassment. The house creaked above me, familiar as an old lullaby. I touched the banister Richard varnished the summer before Claire was born. They wanted this wood, this land, these rooms, but they didn't understand the difference between ownership and possession. You can own paper, you can possess deeds, but belonging is something else, and this house belonged with me as much as I belonged with it. That night, just after 10, headlights swept across my curtains. A car idled at the curb longer than a pizza delivery ever would. I watched from the darkened living room, the phone in my hand. The car door opened and closed. Someone walked up my drive. The porch light snapped on, illuminating a figure with a camera slung around his neck. He raised it, snapped 3 photos of my door, then turned quickly and jogged back to the waiting car. They weren't done. They were escalating. I checked the porch camera. The photos weren't for memories. They were for records, for some file being built against me, brick by brick, image by image. I locked the doors, set the chain, and whispered into the empty kitchen. You wanted a fight? You have one. The kettle whistled like a signal flare, and somewhere across town, my daughter probably poured herself a glass of wine, convinced the battle was nearly won. She had no idea I'd just started sharpening my knives. The next morning the air carried that brittle edge Spokane gets before snow. I woke early, earlier than usual, as if the house itself had nudged me awake. I brewed coffee and spread my binder across the dining table. Each page was a shield now, each stapled affidavit a piece of armor. I flipped through the stack, reminding myself, you're not crazy, you're prepared. Paper doesn't lie. At 8 on the dot, the phone rang. It was my attorney. Yes, my attorney now, because yesterday's storm had pushed me past the point of hoping politeness would protect me. Her name was Hannah Ruiz, a woman younger than Claire, but with a voice that snapped like frost. I'd called her after slamming the door on Ethan and his lockbox circus, and she'd agreed to take me on. I've reviewed your affidavit and the CMA, Hannah said. The informal notice of intent to convey filed under Ethan's name is smoke, not fire. Carries no legal transfer, but it does create the illusion of authority. That illusion is dangerous. My advice: file a public revocation and a notice of fraud risk. We'll also send cease and desist letters to Pierce and Hale and to Ethan directly. Hearing it in her clipped tone steadied me. Someone else saw the pattern. I wasn't alone in the fog. At 10, Joan knocked softly and slipped inside with muffins still warm from her oven. Saw a car parked out front again this morning, she said. Blue sedan. Same one from last night. I checked the porch camera. She was right. A blue Toyota had lingered at 6 a.m., engine visible in the cold air, then eased away when the sun came up. Surveillance. They weren't even hiding anymore. We ate muffins and plotted like generals. Joan would document every car, every stranger with a clipboard, every shadow on my curb. I would keep my binder updated. Together we would outlast them. At noon another letter arrived. This one hand-delivered in a plain envelope slipped under the door. I picked it up with tongs, half expecting poison. Inside was a note written in Claire's rush script. Mom, please. Stop this. Ethan is just trying to help us transition smoothly. If you keep fighting, it will get ugly. I don't want to have to make it ugly. Don't make me choose between you and my family. I read it 3 times. My family. Not yours. My daughter had already chosen. and she hadn't chosen me. I added the note to my binder under a new tab, Threats. By late afternoon, I was tired of being cornered in my own home. I pulled on my coat, tucked the binder under my arm, and drove to Pierce and Hale's office. The receptionist tried to chirp a greeting, but I slid the cease and desist letter across her desk like a playing card and said, "Stamp this received." The office smelled like toner and ambition. Young agents bustled around, all teeth and laughter. But when they saw me standing there with my binder, the atmosphere shifted. They looked at me the way one looks at a live wire, too dangerous to touch. Savannah herself appeared from a glass cubicle, her smile strained. "Margaret, this is highly irregular." "What's irregular?" I said. "Is photographing an occupied home without the owner's consent. What's irregular is sending strangers with contracts to my doorstep. What's irregular is using my daughter's fear as your business model. You've been served. Do not set foot on my property again." She opened her mouth, closed it, then gestured vaguely toward the receptionist. "Fine. Received." Walking out of that office, binder under my arm, felt like taking the first deep breath in weeks. That evening, just as the sun died behind the hills, a car screeched to a stop outside. Claire stormed up the walk, her hair windblown, her eyes wild. She pounded the door until the porch light flickered. I opened it on the chain, calm as stone. "How could you embarrass us like that?" she hissed. "Marching into Pierce and Hale like some paranoid old woman, waving papers around? Do you know what you've done?" "Yes," I said simply. "I've drawn the line." Her voice cracked, rising. "You think you can just say no? You think this house belongs to you forever? You're not thinking clearly. Everyone sees it, even the neighbors." "Funny," I said. "The neighbors bring me casseroles. You bring me lockboxes." She flinched. "Mom, please. If you sign now, it'll be smooth. Ethan has buyers. You'll get money for a condo. You'll be near us. We'll still be family." "Family doesn't ban you from Christmas," I said. "Family doesn't file secret deeds." Her eyes glistened. "Why are you making me the villain?" "Because you volunteered," I said quietly. For a moment she looked 12 again, cheeks blotched, fists clenched. Then the mask dropped. Her voice turned cold. "You'll regret this. I promise." She spun and stalked back to the car. I watched the taillights disappear into the night, my hands steady on the chain. Inside, the house hummed with the heat kicking on, pipes clanging like old drums. I sat at the table, binder open, pen poised. I wrote the day's events in full detail, every word she'd said. As I finished, I caught sight of Richard's photograph in the mantle's glow. "Still with me?" I asked him. The silence felt like yes. I poured myself a glass of wine and let the night settle. But under the calm, something sharp had shifted. They'd stopped pretending now. Claire's mask had cracked, and the ugliness beneath was free. They weren't asking anymore. They were coming, and I was ready. The storm came 2 days later, not snow but paper. A thick envelope arrived by certified mail, the kind that makes your stomach lurch before you even slit it open. The return address wasn't Pierce and Hale this time. It was a law firm, Fletcher, Ames and Lowe. The letter inside was 10 pages of polished intimidation, full of words like concern, capacity evaluation, and petition for guardianship. My name was printed at the top, bold as a headline. They were trying to brand me incompetent. I sat at the dining table, tracing the language with a finger that didn't shake. They claimed I had exhibited erratic behavior and paranoid tendencies, citing the canceled wellness check and my hostile confrontations with family. Every act of defense had been twisted into evidence against me. At the bottom, signed in heavy black ink, representing Claire Harmon and Ethan Lang. The pen left a faint smear where it had pressed too hard. Ethan's lawyer was trying to crush me with ink the way he couldn't with lockboxes. I slid the letter into my binder under threats and poured myself coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in. Joan came by not long after, bundled against the cold. When I showed her the letter, her jaw tightened. "Guardianship," she said. "That's not help. That's prison with nice curtains." I know, I said. They think if they can't buy the house, they'll take me with it. She leaned back, her arms crossed. Then we fight harder. That night, I called Hannah. She didn't sound surprised. This is the next step in their playbook. File for guardianship, argue incapacity, seize control. But it's expensive and public. Judges don't like flimsy evidence. What you need, Margaret, is your own evidence, witnesses, records, evaluations that prove the opposite. I thought of Officer Daniels, who'd seen me calm and competent. Of Joan, who had sat at my table through muffins and plotting. Of my own neat binder, every page a shield. I've got paper, I said. Good, Hannah replied. Paper wins. Still, sleep didn't come easy. I lay in bed listening to the house sigh with the winter wind, the rafters groaning like old bones. Richard's side of the bed was cold, but his absence felt less empty now. Felt like he was awake somewhere, watching, nodding at the choices I made. The next morning, the fight escalated. A woman I didn't recognize stood on my porch at 9 sharp, holding a clipboard and smiling like she sold vacuum cleaners. She introduced herself as court-appointed evaluator. She said she was there to assess my living conditions. I didn't open the door. Show me the order, I said through the chain. She shifted uncomfortably, flipping her papers. I don't have a signed order yet, but I was contacted by family, and there, no order, no entry, I said, and shut the door in her face. My hands didn't tremble until after the deadbolt clicked. She lingered long enough to take photos of the front steps before walking back to her car. I made sure the porch camera caught her license plate. Then I called Hannah again. They're probing, she said. Testing how much you know. You did the right thing. No court signature, no authority. By afternoon, the retaliation came. My phone rang with a number labeled Adult Protective Services. The voice on the other end was clipped, bureaucratic. They'd received an anonymous report of self-neglect. They said, concern about unsafe conditions. They asked if I had enough food, if my bills were being paid, if I was alone too much. Every question was a trap. Answer too angrily and I'd sound unstable. Answer too passively and I'd sound incapable. So I answered the way Richard would have, straight, steady. A carpenter's level laid across the words. My pantry is stocked. My utilities are current. I have neighbors who check on me daily. And if you want proof, I'll fax you receipts before the hour is out. The line was quiet for a moment. Then the bureaucratic voice softened. Just barely. That won't be necessary, ma'am. Thank you for your time. When I hung up, I let out a breath that had been locked in my chest all day. They were throwing everything they had now, each attack sharper, more desperate. But with every move they made, they left prints. Letters, names, dates. All of it went into the binder. That evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Claire called again. Her voice shook with frustration. Why are you dragging strangers into this, Mom? Lawyers, police, neighbors. You're making it worse. You dragged them first, I said. You dragged realtors, evaluators, even the police. All I've done is tell the truth. She was silent a long time. Then she said, if you keep this up, you'll lose everything. No, I said softly. If I keep this up, I'll lose you. The house I'll keep. She hung up without another word. Later, Joan and I sat in the living room, the binder open between us. She poured 2 glasses of wine and raised hers toward Richard's photo. To paper, she said. To paper, I echoed. Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but inside the house was warm, defiant. Every threat they sent me became fuel, every letter another log on the fire. They thought they were breaking me down. They were building me up. They didn't understand yet. You can't evict a soul from its home. Not with ink, not with lies, not with family's betrayal. They wanted me gone by Christmas. But Christmas was coming fast, and I was still here, and I was just getting started. I spent Christmas Eve morning making gift bags. Not the kind with ribbon and tissue, the kind with tabs and exhibits. 12 manila envelopes, each stuffed with copies. The affidavit I'd recorded, the the cease and desists, the informal conveyance filing with Ethan's name glowing like a hazard light, the CMA with the sticky flag shouting sign here, the police wellness report marked no concerns, the APS call log with my answers underlined, and a printout of the text where Claire wrote, "I don't want to have to make it ugly." On top of each packet, I paperclipped a photo. My front door with the tiny screw hole where the lockbox hook had been. Richard's Phillips lay on the table like a signature. Joan watched me from the stove, stirring cider, her mouth set. "You really going to do this?" "They wanted an audience," I said. "They'll have one." At 5:30, the sky bruised itself into twilight. I put on my navy dress, the one I wore to Richard's retirement party, and my wool coat with the inside pocket where paper rides like a heartbeat. Joan drove. I held the envelopes like a bouquet. Claire's house glowed on a cul-de-sac of matching ambition. Through the window, I saw a tree staged like a catalog and faces I mostly recognized. Claire's friend Marla from the junior league, Ethan's boss with a tie like a flag, neighbors who say we should get coffee and never mean it, my grandchildren hovering at the edge of adult conversation trying to read the current. When Joan and I stepped inside, the room tipped for a second, as if reality needed to catch its balance. Claire's smile appeared like a bruise covered with makeup. "Mom," she said too brightly. "I didn't think." "No," I said. "You didn't." Ethan materialized at her shoulder, the host posture he practices in the mirror. "This isn't a good time." "It's exactly the time," I replied, and set the first envelope beside the charcuterie board like an extra cheese. "Merry Christmas." Silence makes a sound when it tightens. Conversation drained to a whisper. Napkins paused in midair. I moved around the table distributing packets the way I've always passed rolls and stories and care. Each envelope slid into a new pair of hands. Each pair of eyes lowered to the first page. Each face lifted different. Surprise, confusion, offense, sympathy, recognition. "What is this?" Marla asked, turning a page. "A police report?" "From the wellness check Claire authorized," I said. "It says I'm fine." Ethan's boss adjusted his glasses, frowning at the notice of intent to convey. "This isn't a deed," he muttered. "Why would your name be on this, Ethan?" Ethan gave that laugh men use when they can't find another weapon. "You know how older folks get. Paperwork scares them. We were just trying to help coordinate." I lifted an eyebrow. "Your coordination included calling APS and hiring a notary to my door with a transfer on death deed, which you flagged like a birthday invitation." I tapped the yellow tabs. "You also scheduled pre-listing photography and drilled a hook for a lockbox on my doorframe. That's not coordination. That's conquest." A neighbor I barely knew ran a finger over a photocopy of the CMA. "This is invasive." Claire's voice cracked. "She's twisting everything. She's been erratic. She changed the locks. She yelled at me. Her voice fell to a whisper meant to carry. "She's grieving." "I'm grieving a husband," I said calmly. "Not a house. The house is still alive. So am I." Joan stood a little behind my shoulder, not speaking, simply present. She doesn't look like a sword, but she is one. I slid one last envelope across the table and left my hand on it. "This one is for you, Claire." She didn't reach for it, so I opened it myself and took out a single page, a receipt from the recorder stamped today's date. I held it where everyone could see the seal. "I put the house in trust this morning," I said. "I am the trustee. I live there for as long as I breathe. When I'm gone, it goes where I say, not where a lockbox points. No one here has authority over it. Not a realtor. Not a family representative. Not even a daughter who forgot which way love leans." There was a sound like a room exhaling. Ethan's jaw went tight. Claire's gaze skittered around the island like she could find an exit in the marble. My grandson looked at me. Really looked, not through me, and in his eyes I saw it click. Standing your ground is a kind of lesson. Marla cleared her throat. "Claire? Is any of this untrue?" Claire's answer came out small. "She's overreacting." "Overreacting is locking the door because you smelled smoke," Joan said mildly. "Setting the fire is different." Ethan slammed his glass down hard enough that stemware around it trembled. "Get out!" he hissed at me, teeth too white. "You don't get to hijack our holiday." "I didn't hijack anything," I said. "I came to return gifts. You've been leaving them on my porch all month." The grandchildren stood on the fault line between adults. My granddaughter spoke, voice careful. "Mom, did you call the police on Nana?" Claire looked like her own child had slapped her. "It was a wellness check," she said, pleading for the room to nod. "She needs help." "I needed respect," I said. "You sent strangers." A man in a tasteful sweater vest, Ethan's boss, I think, closed the packet and addressed me directly. "If you have counsel, let the lawyers handle it. This is ugly." "It got ugly when they filed a guardianship petition accusing me of paranoia," I replied. "I'm not the one who brought the court to Christmas." Claire's nails clicked against her glass. "You're destroying us," she said, voice gone flat. "Our reputation, our relationships." "I am holding up a mirror," I said gently. "You're seeing yourselves." Ethan stepped closer, close enough to smell cologne that costs more than kindness. "You think your little trust stops anything? We'll challenge it. We'll win." "Maybe," I said. "But here's the thing about trust." I touched my chest. "I built one you can't reach." For a moment the room held us like a courtroom holds a verdict. Then the string quartet on somebody's playlist finally found the end of their song, and the next track started. Something cheery, like the universe didn't know where to put its hands. I gathered the empty envelope from the center of the counter and tucked it under my arm. "I won't stay," I said to no one and everyone. "I wanted to say this in front of witnesses because you chose witnesses. I will not be exiled from the story you're telling about me." As Joan and I turned to go, a voice chased us. The older woman from down the block, the one who always waves when I walk in the mornings. "Ms. Harmon." I paused. Her eyes were brimming. "For what it's worth, we see you." "Thank you," I said, and meant it, because sometimes one sentence is a cloak. On the porch, the cold bit my cheeks. Joan's hand found my elbow even though I didn't need steadying. Inside, voices rose, tripped, collided. A story was breaking in that kitchen. A different kind than the one they'd rehearsed. The door thunked shut. I breathed in December until my lungs ached with it. Back home, I set Richard's Phillips back on the table and slid the remaining packet into the binder under a new tab. Christmas. Witnesses. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A number I didn't recognize, but I knew what it was before I answered. "Process server," a voice said. "Are you Ms. Harmon? I have documents for you." "Come to the porch," I said. "The light is on." He handed me a manila envelope, not festive. Inside, a notice of hearing on the guardianship petition. December 27th, 9 a.m. 3 days from now. Claire and Ethan had paid extra for speed. I put the notice on the table, next to my trust receipt. One tried to take me. The other made me unliftable. I called Hannah. "It's set," I said. 9 a.m. the 27th. "Good," she said, the way a surgeon says it when you finally have a date with the scalpel that will save you. "We'll file our response tomorrow. Letters from Officer Daniels and APS noting no concerns. Affidavits from Joan and your neighbors. Your cognitive screening if you're willing. I want you to take one not because you need to, but because paper is weather." "I'll do it," I said. After we hung up, the house hummed, heat, fridge, the minute crackle of settling wood. I poured cider for Joan and me and set 2 mugs by Richard's photo like we were 3 again. On the mantel, the juniper wreath stirred in the draft. I thought of my grandmother's saying, the one I haven't remembered in years. "If they come for your roof, show them your roots." They came for my roof. They'd meet my roots in court. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. The house was too alive. Every creak of wood reminding me of what was at stake. I moved from room to room like a watchman, touching the banister Richard varnished, the window frame he mended one winter when money was thin, the kitchen counter where Claire had once sat swinging her legs as a child, asking if Santa could fit down narrow chimneys. Every surface had a memory, and every memory whispered the same thing. Don't let them take us. I sat at the dining table at 3 a.m. with my binder spread open, rehearsing. Hannah had prepped me. Answer clearly, don't let them rattle you. Speak only to the judge, not to Ethan or Claire. She said judges notice when elders get shouted down. They don't like it. Your job, she told me, is to show calm, to show continuity. Paper will do the rest. When dawn came gray, I made coffee strong enough to burn through fog. Joan arrived in her Sunday best, pearls at her throat, binder of her own under her arm. She'd sworn an affidavit, but she wanted to be in that courtroom. They can't say you're alone if I'm sitting right there, she said. At 8 we drove downtown. The courthouse steps glistened with frost. Hannah met us inside, brisk, efficient, her dark suit like armor. They're here already, she murmured, nodding toward the hallway outside the courtroom. Claire sat rigid on a bench, Ethan beside her whispering into his phone. They looked up when I entered, and for a split second Claire's eyes flickered with something almost human. Regret, maybe. But then Ethan leaned close and whatever softness had lived in her was gone. We filed into the courtroom. The judge, a woman with sharp glasses and sharper eyes, took her seat. The clerk read the case name, in the matter of the guardianship of Margaret and Harmon. Hearing those words spoken aloud felt like a knife sliding across the floor between us. Ethan's attorney rose first. Polished, practiced, voice smooth as cream. He painted a picture of a lonely widow in decline, confused about her finances, prone to paranoia, alienating her only daughter. He waived the police wellness check as if it had been proof of concern rather than proof of competence. He cited my refusal to let qualified evaluators into my home, my supposed hostility toward realtors, my erratic decision to change locks. Each word was sanded to sound reasonable, each phrase sharpened to wound. I listened without flinching. I knew if I shook my head or snapped back, they'd point and say, see? Unstable. So I sat still, binder closed on my lap, hands folded. Joan squeezed my arm once, a silent reminder. Paper wins. When they finished, Hannah stood. She didn't pace. She didn't shout. She laid out facts like bricks. The affidavit I filed. The police report stamped no concerns. The APS call log confirming no evidence of neglect. Joan's affidavit describing my daily routines, my meals, my repairs. Letters from 2 neighbors attesting to my alertness, my independence, my presence in the community. Finally, she laid down the trust certificate, the recorded document with its raised seal. This is not a woman unable to manage her affairs, Hannah said. This is a woman who recognized a threat and took appropriate, lawful steps to protect herself. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Harmon, do you want to make a statement? I rose slowly, every bone reminding me of its years, but my voice steady. Your Honor, I know what my daughter and son-in-law want. They want the house my husband and I built our lives in. They want to decide when I should leave it. But I am not confused. I am not paranoid. I am not unwell. I pay my bills. I maintain my home. Cook my own meals. I drive myself here today. What I will not do is sign my life away because someone else finds it convenient. If that's paranoia, then let me be paranoid. But it isn't. It's self-preservation. The judge watched me for a long moment, then nodded. Thank you, Mrs. Harmon. Claire shifted in her seat, whispering urgently to her attorney, but the judge held up a hand. I've heard enough. She adjusted her glasses, eyes narrowing. Guardianship is a serious restriction on civil rights. It is not a tool to resolve family disputes. Based on the evidence, I find no cause to appoint a guardian. The petition is denied. The words dropped into the silence like stones into water. Claire gasped. Ethan's face hardened into a mask. Joan let out the smallest sigh, and Hannah allowed herself the barest smile. But the judge wasn't finished. She leaned forward. Furthermore, I caution the petitioners. Using the courts to harass or dispossess an elder is a grave abuse. Should I see another filing like this without evidence, sanctions will follow. Ethan's jaw ticked, but he said nothing. Claire's eyes glistened as if she might cry, but no tears came. The gavel fell. Case closed. Outside the courtroom, the air tasted different, thinner, freer. Joan hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs might complain. Hannah shook my hand firmly. "You won," she said. "But stay alert. People like them don't stop because a judge tells them no." She was right. In the hallway, Ethan brushed past me, his shoulder hard against mine. "This isn't over," he muttered. Claire trailed behind him, avoiding my gaze. Joan bristled, but I touched her arm. "Let him go," I said. "He just watched his house of cards collapse. He'll need time to find new tricks." That evening, back home, I lit the fireplace with the kindling Richard had split years ago. The crackle and glow filled the rooms with something warmer than victory, something closer to peace. I poured a glass of wine and set it beside his photo. "We made it through the first battle," I told him. "But the war's not done." My phone buzzed on the table. A text from an unknown number. "Enjoy your little win. The bank won't care what a judge thinks." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I slid the message into my binder under threats and closed it firmly. The fire popped, the house settled, and outside, snow finally began to fall. They had tried to take me apart with paper, and I had beaten them with paper. But if they were shifting to money, loans, liens, leverage, then the next storm would be different. I sipped my wine, the taste sharp, bracing. Let it come, I thought. Roots run deeper than banks. The snow lay heavy on the streets when the letter from the bank arrived. Not a neighborly envelope this time, but corporate stock. Windowed, machine printed, my name aligned like an equation. I slid it open with Richard's old pocket knife, the one he used to sharpen pencils for the kids. The notice was polite in the way knives are polished, cold, gleaming, meant to cut. A notice of inquiry into irregularities surrounding my property. It said the mortgage had been refinanced under a family arrangement and that the bank was reviewing repayment structures. In plainer words, Ethan had tried to tangle my name in new debts. I folded the letter slowly, slid it into my binder under bank threats, and brewed coffee so strong it burned the air. Joan came by mid-morning, stomping snow from her boots. I showed her the letter. Her eyes narrowed. "They're trying a back door." "They always do," I said. Hannah called that afternoon. She'd already heard. The bank had received family communications claiming I was no longer capable of handling my finances. Ethan again. He was nothing if not persistent. "Don't worry," Hannah said, her voice sharp as glass. "We'll respond before they can act. You have clean title. No liens, no arrears. They can't manufacture debt out of thin air." Still, the thought of Ethan playing with numbers in rooms I couldn't see filled me with an old dread. Numbers had always been his shield. Pay stubs waved, credit lines flaunted, debts hidden like skeletons. He was trying to build a story where I was drowning and he was the lifeboat. That evening I drove to the bank myself, binder in the passenger seat like a companion. The lobby smelled of disinfectant and faint pine from a weary Christmas tree. A young teller tried to direct me to a kiosk, but I asked for the manager. Mr. Kim met me with professional calm. He adjusted his tie as I laid out my documents. The trust certificate, the affidavit, the denial of guardianship, the letters of harassment. "My name is on this deed," I said. "No one else. I've authorized no refinancing. If you've received communications to the contrary, they're fraudulent." He leafed through the pages, brow tightening. "You're right," he said finally. "We've had correspondence from a Mr. Lang claiming durable power of attorney." "Medical," I corrected, tapping the affidavit. "Only medical, never financial." He nodded. "We'll flag the account. Any requests must be accompanied by your in-person verification. I'll add a password known only to you." When I left the bank, the cold air felt cleaner, sharper. Ethan's net had slipped, but predators don't sleep. That night, headlights swept across my curtains again. I turned off the lamp and watched from the dark. A figure moved along my porch, crouching, fiddling near the mailbox. I waited until he retreated to the car before I opened the door. Snow showed footprints, deep and obvious. Inside the mailbox, an unsealed envelope with no stamp, No return address. Inside, photographs. My house from angles only someone close could take. The kitchen window glowing, my silhouette faint. The upstairs bedroom curtain half drawn. On the back of one photo, scrawled in hurried ink, "Time isn't on your side." I pressed the paper flat on the table, my stomach tightening. They had moved from paper threats to presents. Watching, circling, trying to spook me into surrender. I slipped the photos into the binder under surveillance, then called Joan. She arrived in minutes, robe over her nightgown, hair wild. When she saw the photos, her jaw clenched. "They want you afraid. Don't give them that." "I'm not afraid," I said, though my hands trembled. "I'm furious." We sat by the fireplace until dawn, 2 centuries in the glow. The photos hissed quietly as I slid copies onto the flames, keeping the originals sealed away. Richard would have told me anger is useful only if it's sharp, not hot. So I honed it. The next morning I met Hannah at her office. She took one look at the photographs and called a contact at the police department. Officer Daniels showed up again, uniform crisp, eyes sharp. She studied the images and the footprints in the snow I'd photographed. "This isn't neighborhood mischief," she said flatly. "It's targeted harassment. We'll open a case." I asked if they could really stop him. "Maybe not stop," she admitted. "But now there's a file with his name in it. Paper, Mrs. Harmon. That's how we win." I drove home lighter, but when I pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made me stop cold. My for sale sign, the one that had never existed, was standing crooked in my yard. Bright red letters. "Coming soon." Pierce and Hale logo at the bottom. Neighbors had already seen it. A couple slowed their dog walk to stare. One waved uncertainly, as if to ask if congratulations were in order. I marched straight to the sign, yanked it from the ground, and carried it inside like a body. I leaned it against the wall, mud still clinging to its post. Then I called Pierce and Hale. Savannah's voice trembled this time. "We didn't authorize any signage, Mrs. Harmon. Someone's impersonating our office. That's a crime." "Then treat it like one," I said, and hung up. I didn't bother to hide the sign. I left it in the foyer, a reminder of how far they'd go. That evening, Claire called. No greeting, no apology. Just, "Why can't you make this easy?" "Easy for who?" I asked. "For all of us," she said, voice brittle. "For me, for Ethan, for the kids. They're confused, Mom. They hear things. They see things. People are talking. You're ruining our reputation." "Your reputation was built on my sacrifice," I said quietly. "On my house, my money, my years. If it can't survive truth, it deserves to crumble." Her breath hitched. "He warned you," she whispered, then hung up. I set the phone down, poured myself whiskey instead of wine, and sat by the window as the snow kept falling. The yard outside was clean white, except for the hole where the signpost had been, dark soil gaping like a wound. They had tried the courts. They had tried the bank. Now they were trying spectacle, making neighbors think I was already leaving, making me question my own ground. But I wasn't leaving. I pressed my palm flat against the cold glass and whispered to the night, "This is my house. You'll have to drag my ghost out to take it." The snow thickened, covering footprints, erasing traces. Tomorrow it would look untouched. But I would remember. Every move they made left another piece of evidence. Every scare tactic another page for the binder. They thought they were tightening a noose. They didn't see I was braiding a rope of my own. And mine was strong enough to pull the whole truth into the light. The morning of the neighborhood meeting, I woke before dawn. The snow had crusted into hard glass across the yard, and the air was so still the smoke from my chimney stood straight into the sky. I brewed coffee and set the binder on the table, its tabs fanned like a crown. Every page inside was a step I'd taken through fire. Affidavits, police reports, photographs, threats. Even the crooked for sale sign I'd hauled inside and propped by the coat rack. Evidence had become my language, and today was the day to speak it out loud. Joan drove me to the community center, though I insisted I could manage alone. She knew better. She wanted to be seen beside me, her hands steady at my elbow, her face turned outward like a shield. When we arrived, the room was already filling. Neighbors, church friends, even Officer Daniels in uniform at the back. Someone had put out folding chairs in rows, and at the front sat Claire and Ethan, stiff, polished, a folder of their own resting on Ethan's lap. The air was taut, the way it feels right before thunder breaks. Claire's voice trembled as she rose to speak. "We asked for this meeting because we're concerned. My mother is unwell. She's isolating. She's been hostile. We're only trying to protect her." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but not all in sympathy. Some had already heard pieces of my story, whispers carried across fences and sidewalks. Still, Claire pressed on, painting herself as dutiful daughter, Ethan as responsible caretaker. They spoke of love, of worry, of responsibility. Words sanded smooth until they shone like plastic. When they sat down, the silence hung heavy. Then I rose, slowly, carefully, binder under my arm. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't smile. I just opened the cover and let the tabs shine. "I know the story you've heard," I said. "The fragile widow, the paranoid mother, the burden too heavy for family to carry. But here is the truth." One by one, I laid the pages on the table in front of me, holding them up so the room could see. The affidavit, signed and notarized. The police report declaring me competent. The APS call log recording no concerns. Letters from neighbors who had watched me walk, garden, drive, cook. The trust certificate, embossed seal catching the light. "This is not the paperwork of a woman in decline," I said. "This is the paperwork of a woman defending herself." I pulled the photographs next. My porch with the screw hook, the strangers with clipboards, the envelope of surveillance shots. Gasps flickered across the room. This is not love. This is siege. Finally, I turned and pointed to the crooked for sale sign leaning against the wall. "And this," I said, "was planted in my yard without my consent. Someone wanted you to believe I had already surrendered. But I haven't." Silence again, heavier now but not empty. Charged. People were seeing. People were deciding. Claire stood abruptly, her face flushed. "She's twisting everything. She's sick. Can't you see? She's obsessed with that house." "No," I said quietly, cutting her off. "I am committed to that house. There is a difference. One is madness. The other is memory. And you, Claire, you who sat at that kitchen table when you were 7, begging me for another cookie, you should know the difference." Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came. Ethan tried to step in, voice hard. "You can't keep this up forever. You'll slip. And when you do, then I'll fall on my own stairs," I said. "Not because you pushed me." The room shifted. I felt it like a tide turning. Neighbors' eyes found mine, warm, steady. Officer Daniels stepped forward, her voice calm but carrying. "I've been in her home. She's fine. And I'll say this plainly. Harassment of elders is a crime in this state. Anyone thinking of testing that line should remember it." Claire sat down, her hands shaking in her lap. Ethan's jaw clenched so tight a vein throbbed at his temple. They looked smaller than I'd ever seen them, cornered not by me but by the truth made visible. I closed the binder, its weight solid, final. "You wanted the house," I said. "But it's not just wood and brick. It's memory. It's roots. And roots don't sign away. They hold." When the meeting ended, people came to me quietly, one by one. A pat on the shoulder. A whispered, "We're with you." Joan hugged me hard, her eyes fierce and wet. Officer Daniels promised she'd follow up about the photographs and the sign. Claire and Ethan slipped out without a word, their folder unopened. Their performance collapsed. Back home, I set the binder on the mantel, beside Richard's photo. The house seemed to breathe with me, old with settling into peace. Snow tapped against the windows like knuckles, but it felt less like intrusion now and more like witness. I poured a glass of wine and raised it toward Richard. "We held them off," I said. "We're still here." The fire popped. The house hummed. I sat back, my body tired but my spirit iron. They had tried paper, banks, courts, and lies. They had tried shadows and threats. But in the end, all they done was build my case stronger. They wanted my house. I wanted my life. And I had both.